keep looking at that. Did you get a snack already?
Well, Brian can do it, and he can bring
Yeah.
blood.
Water.
Brandon Lynch.
Yeah.
He was there at yeah, I was like, I ain't got to hang out with him in a while.
Yeah.
It's like, we're
Actually, I left that right.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Take 6. I know you guys like were staring at me like, why is she standing up there? Think of my time.
We're shut down. That's
Yeah.
so you'll be caught.
Thank you.
I mean, sometimes I mean, we should be sitting right there. That's what we had the last time, yeah. Fireside chats. Yeah, that's a better picture. Yeah.
Look like we're calm.
Yeah. I'm gonna slide it back, just a hair, so you're not right up in the camera. Let's
Oh, okay.
back
Yeah.
just a little bit.
Oh, cause that's the video.
That's it, yeah.
Okay.
Hot seats.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk
about anything random.
Random.
She's real good at that.
What should I talk about?
Talk about the weather.
The weather.
It's gonna rain this
Yeah,
time.
it's gonna rain this weekend. I would rather if it's sunny, 'cause it's always better.
Jeff, my first question.
Yeah.
How are you not cold?
I don't know. It's like normally I run super cold. I think it's because I got all flustered this morning trying to deal with my IT problems. I'm still running on the high of, I guess, just anger and spite.
I'll just go ahead. All right, well, let's get going. I want to make sure you all have your full time.
Okay.
All right, so I want to welcome everyone, all of our aspiring professionals. I know that we are, doing great things. We want to do great things as future leaders. I want to welcome you to the Men and Women in Nuclear event, an enlightening session designed to provide you with invaluable insights into careers in nuclear and STEM fields. Before we begin, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to our sponsors, the student organizations, women and men of color, for their unwavering support in making this event possible. Today, we have the honor of hearing from 2 professionals from Duke Energy, Carlos Minor and Jess Link. With their wealth of experience and expertise in the nuclear industry, they will share their inspiring stories and provide valuable insights into the dynamic world of nuclear energy and STEM careers. As we begin today's discussion, I encourage each of you to actively engage, ask questions, and absorb as much knowledge as you can, whether you are considering a career in nuclear or simply curious about the field. Today's event offers a unique opportunity to learn from industry experts and envision your future in STEM. Before we get into the session, I want to extend a special invitation to students. Our student organization hosts a series of insightful sessions throughout the semester, featuring captivating speakers and thought-provoking topics. I encourage you to mark your calendars and join us for upcoming events. So we have on February 23rd, we're gonna have Zumba, and that will be led by Charity Martin. Then that will be followed by Community Connector and Walhalla Town Councilor, Sarai Melendez. Next, we'll have Maria Morales, and she's with the Urban League. And last but definitely not least, we'll have Dr. Lanika Mussolini, and she'll be discussing scholarships and financial opportunities. All right, so don't miss those. And of course, we want to thank you for being a part of this event. We're looking forward to our conversation. So now we want to introduce our speakers. So first, we have Jess Link. Hello. So it's our pleasure to introduce you to Jess Link. Jess hails from Simpsonville, South Carolina. She has a remarkable journey in the nuclear industry. After graduating from Greenville Technical, Charter High School in 2003, Jess pursued her passion for engineering at Clemson University, where she graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering in 2007. During her time at Clemson, Jess gained valuable practical experience through internship at Honeywell Aerospace in the summer of 2005. Additionally, she broadened her horizon with a study abroad program in Bristol, England in 2006, further enriching her academic and cultural experiences. Upon graduation, Jess embarked on her professional career with Duke Energy, where she has made significant contribution over the years. She began as a component engineer, specializing in heat exchangers and valves from 2007 to 2011. Subsequently, she transitioned to the role of system engineer, focusing on raw water systems from 2011 to 2014. Jess's dedication and expertise led her to her current role in operations, where she's been since 2014. Notably, Jess achieved the milestone of becoming a licensed district senior reactor operator, or SRO, in 2018 and obtained STA qualification in 2019, demonstrating her commitment to excellence in her field. Additionally, she serves on the operations online coordinator since 2023. Further showcasing her leadership and dedication to advancing operational efficiency. Please join us in welcoming Jess Link. We have Carlos Minor. With a career spanning over 2 decades at Duke Energy's Oconee Nuclear Station, Carlos brings a wealth of experience and expertise to our discussion today. Born and raised in Rock Hill, South Carolina, Carlos is a proud graduate of Northwestern High School, where he honed his leadership skills as a Trojan. His journey in nuclear industry began 6 years of dedicated service in the Navy, where he served on the nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. Carlos's time in the military instilled in him a strong sense of discipline and commitment to excellence, qualities that have undoubtedly shaped his career trajectory. Upon transitioning to Duke Energy, Carlos continued to excel through the ranks with distinction. With 25 years of service under his belt, Carlos has held several pivotal roles in operations, including senior reactor operator, control room supervisor, and overseeing operations in the Work Control Center. His unwavering dedication to safety and efficiency has earned him the respect and admiration of his colleagues and peers alike. Please join me in also welcoming Carlos Major.
So good for myself now.
Right.
Yeah.
So we want to move right on to your presentation.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and admit we had a lot of technical difficulties this morning. So unfortunately, some of the videos in our presentation don't work, but we're used to not having those work. We'll just skip right over them. There's still plenty to talk about. But thank you so much for that great introduction.
Yes.
I think that's the fanciest introduction I've ever
Yeah,
had. So I feel pretty good about myself right now.
Yes.
But yeah, so we're here to just talk to you about nuclear in general. We'll also talk some about Duke Energy as a whole, because Duke Energy isn't just nuclear. That's where we've spent our careers.
Yes.
But I'll just go ahead and let y'all know, Duke Energy has tons and tons of careers. I mean, we're energy takes a lot of folks to do it. Everything from we do generation, distribution, transmissions. That takes a lot of people to get all that power out and working. And then when people turn on their lights, they expect them to work. So in order to have that, kind of reliability, it takes a whole big crew to do it. Us. So we'll get into it. So like I said, his goal today is just kind of give you a little introduction to nuclear. I encourage you, if this interests you and you haven't been out there before, go out to the world of energy. It's out there right next to the nuclear power plant, Oconee Nuclear Station. It has great little museum displays that kind of explain power generation, how it works, different types of energy and everything like that. For a little museum about energy that started in the sixties, actually, they actually do a really good job of keeping it up to date. Kayla Kreuzberger, she's our senior communication specialist out there. She does a great job of engaging with the community and also keeping everything that we have up to date. All right. So if anyone want to guess, in what year did Duke Energy first nuclear power plant come into operation?
1950.
Okay, so close. Anyone else? Say what?
So it's definitely about the same 19.
Yeah, so nuclear power has actually been going on for a while. If you've ever heard about Chicago File 1, that was actually started in 1942. That was Dr. Enrico Fermi. Basically, they made a very low powered reactor underneath a football stadium, from what I recall. And all they did is they just proved the concept of fission. Well, I mean, whenever you realize, hey, I can make power for, pretty easily using this, it scales up very quickly because that's the latest and greatest technology. So the first nuclear power plant in the world started in 1957, so you were pretty close. That's in the world. Duke Energy, we got on board in 1971 with the Robinson nuclear plant. And it's in Hartsville, South Carolina. I think actually at the time they were Carolina Power Alliance. Yeah, and they since then been acquired by Duke Energy into our fleet. And then in 1974, has anyone heard of the Nuclear Regulatory Committee? No? So what the Nuclear Regulatory Committee does is they actually oversee anything that has to do with nuclear. So they're not only involved in nuclear power production, they're involved with the Navy and their ships that they operate. There's a lot of nuclear actually in medical, as far as X-rays, you have to have a radiation source. So a lot of their involvement has to do with controlling fissile material. For our site, for nuclear power production, you have at least one resident per unit per site on a site. So for Oconee Nuclear Station, we actually have 3 permanent rotating nuclear regulatory residents. And basically what they do is they just keep an eye on us and make sure we're playing by all the rules that we say we're going to play by. And then they do the same thing with the Navy and also anything that has to do with controlling fissile material. So that could be a crew map. Yes. So nuclear power for Duke Energy, we have a total of 11 units at 6 different sites. They're spread out across North and South Carolina. And we actually power between all those sites approximately 8 million homes. So that's quite a lot of power. I think the energy mixture in South Carolina is somewhere in the 70% range. That's rather high compared to the rest of the nation. If you can go Google a map of like where nuclear sites are in the US, you'll see they're mostly over here on the East Coast. I think there's 2 still out on the West Coast, but that has a lot to do with politics is what it comes down to. Yeah. So Oconee Nuclear Station, we began our commercial operation with our first unit in 1973. Our first license, because you'll see this mission, was for 40 years. So normally whenever a power plant gets licensed, it's licensed for 40 years. A lot of sites now are reaching the end of that 40 years and they're doing their relicensing. So the relicensing is then good for 20 years. And what that process involves is basically they come in, they look at how our systems are operating. We do a load of samples on everything from the reactor vessel to the groundwater to everything. They do a lot of projections about, how long they think all of our equipment is still going to last. Sometimes they'll say, hey, if you're going to continue for another 20 years, this is what you need to replace, and they'll license you for another 20 years. So we're actually currently in our first 20-year relicensing, and we're working on our second 20-year relicensing. So we're currently working with the NRC to identify what all we need to do for them to agree that we can operate for another 20 years. And that takes a lot of work, as far as this is a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of research, a lot of investigations to make sure that that nuclear site can operate safely for another 20 years. At our site, we have more than 800 employees. That will actually increase a lot whenever we go into what's called a refueling outage. The way refueling outage works for a power plant is that fissile material basically kind of runs out of juice. And whenever we refuel, we actually replace about 1/3 of the reactor core. And so, in order to do that, we actually shut all of the systems down. And while we have them shut down, it's time to get to work. It's the best time to go and do all the maintenance and stuff, because it's a lot better if we can take that nuclear unit and put it online and just let it run for its full 2-year cycle instead of bringing it up and down and up and down. We just let it run for 2 years. If something happens where we need to take it down and repair equipment, we'll do it. But ideally, we fix everything in the outage. And since it's all hands on deck, it gets really, really crowded. As far as the economic benefits of a nuclear power plant is a big piece of property. So, we're gonna pay lots of property taxes, that benefits the state government. We're a business, so there's business taxes. All of us pay our income taxes, of course. And then, also, since, we wanna make sure that the, community has a positive outlook towards us, we do a lot of community outreach. So in addition to education, we actually do a lot of volunteering and donating towards the community. Our program we have is called Power of Giving. And so we'll every year they do a big campaign where they encourage employees to think about their donations. And Duke Energy actually matches all of our donations that we make to the community at up to about $2,500.
Yes.
Before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quick question related. So you mentioned, that it had to go offline. Does that mean that like power during that period or the power still going, to customers? Does that count, does that cause like an actual power outage?
So what we'll do is, the way you want to do your power distribution is you actually want to have a bunch of power plants on the grid. So if one of them goes down, the others can still hold it up. So what we do is we actually plan all of our nuclear outages across our fleet to be staggered, so that only 1 or 2 of them is down at a time. And while we're down, the others can pull it up. And also, our other power plants that are on natural gas and coal, they can come online and they can support that as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and does that take a substantial amount of time to change that out?
So right now, our outages typically last between 20 and 30 days, depending on the maintenance being done.
Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. All right, so what energy sources does Duke Energy use to generate electricity? Does anyone want to chime in?
Well, you said cold.
Yeah,
That's 30
there's
seconds
one.
ago.
There's one. Yeah, hydropower is one. That's my brother actually works in hydropower. Anything else? Yeah, solar. Yeah, of course, nuclear.
And wind, I did hear wind.
Yeah, oh, okay, yep, wind.
Generation.
All right, and then the last one is natural gas and fuel. So natural gas and fuel, nuclear, coal, and then hydro renewable, that's hydro, solar, and wind. We actually count those all into one group and we call it our renewable department. So like you see up here, nuclear is 37% of how Duke Energy makes power. And Duke Energy is actually spread across the Carolinas, Florida, and Indiana. So I mentioned in the Carolinas, our mix is actually 70% nuclear. If you stretch that over this entire territory, it actually comes down to 37%. All right, so who knows what is in nuclear fuel? What element? It's probably on the board behind me.
We get a hand.
Yeah. I think I heard you say it. Yeah, uranium. All right, so what it is you use a special isotope of uranium where I don't know how much you guys remember from chemistry or whatnot, but you have a uranium atom. That's a very heavy atom, and it's electrons and neutrons are kind of loose a little bit because of that. That means it's more likely to fission. And so what we do is if you get a certain isotope where it has a different number of electrons on the outside, it makes it even more unstable. Well, the isotope we get is just like perfect, because like if you hit it with a little neutron, it starts fissioning. It makes for a really good chain reaction.
And that fission process, it gives off heat. And the heat is what we use to convert it to steam, and then the steam powers the turbines, and the turbines powers the generator,
Yeah.
so that's how
But,
the picture goes.
our nuclear fuel, whenever it's created, is actually looks like those little pellets, and some of y'all that are here, I actually have some demos over there, like the size and everything. But, when they first make it, you can actually touch it, because that fission process hasn't initiated yet. So it's not giving off radiation. So there's actually, Westinghouse has a processing facility in Columbia, South Carolina. And it's so crazy to see them, just lining up those little fuel pellets, and they put them into a fuel assembly where they're in these little long pins, and it's just. Cause, we're used to seeing, nuclear fuel in this assemblies, it's underwater to protect you from the radiation and everything like that. And since theirs hasn't, initiated the fission process yet, they're just going along, cleaning them, wiping them down and everything, so. Yeah, it's very different, it's very different. But it was a very educational experience. So, 1 uranium fuel pellet, my slide is broken here, it is equal to about, I think, I'm trying to do this from memory, I think it's 4, yeah, you have it there, check me if I'm wrong, it's a ton of coal, 49 barrels of oil and 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas, is that right? Yeah. So, but I mean, like, you think about the density as far as that, I don't know if y'all have driven a coal site before, but they have train cars going in there every day, just building up that mountain of coal so they can keep on burning. The way we do it is, so our fuel assemblies are actually 12 feet
12
long.
feet.
And then their tops, they're about that big, and there's 177 fuel
177.
assemblies in our reactor. And each of those fuel assemblies, I said we refuel every 2 years, but we don't want to replace in the third. So each of those fuel assemblies is good for 6 years. So if you can picture about the size that would take up, 6 years of power, that's pretty good. But then you think about a coal plant where they're having to bring it in, day out. Makes it a lot easier work-wise that you don't have to refuel continuously. Yeah. So, we talked a little bit about fission, basically how, you have that big uranium atom, you have to initiate the chain reaction. The way we do it now is we just expose it to the already activated fuel. And since our fuel is already activated, it'll start that chain reaction with the new fuel, so that is fissioning. Whenever it fissions, it breaks down to additional, isotopes, sometimes new elements. It's throwing off neutrons. And like Carlos mentioned, a big source of what it gives off in fission is heat. And the way that we capture that heat is we just keep it in water. I mean, water is a great heat transfer medium. I know there are other types of reactors out there that will use heavy water. There's molten salt reactors. In the US, we use what's called a light water reactor, where it's basically just water. It is, we just use regular demineralized water mixed with what's called boric acid to act as a moderator, and that's what we use. Into that more in a second. So back behind me, you'll see the structure of how nuclear plants make electricity. I will say there's 2 types in the US. There's what's called a boiling water reactor and a pressurized water reactor. This is a pressurized water reactor. They work about the same once you go.
And the pressure keeps the water from boiling, so
Yeah.
keep it pressurized, keep it in a liquid state. And that's how we're able to transfer the heat out of the reactor into the generator to the turbines.
Why don't you cover this slide? I'll take a break and take
All
a
right.
water.
So you have the reactor vessel there, it shows, and then you see that other illustration that shows the control rods. That's how we control the reaction. The rods varies the reaction of the reactor, so we maintain certain power level. And the pressurizer, like I said, it keeps the water in a liquid state. It goes through a steam generator there. And so the primary water and the secondary water never mixes. So that's how we protect the public. We keep everything enclosed inside. So the secondary water is treated chemistry water, so it has very special properties, so it doesn't rust or anything like that. And then we use that water and turn it into steam, and it goes into our turbine, spins the turbine, which is connected to a generator, and we provide electricity to the grid. And then the water comes out of the turbine, it goes through a condenser, it's cooled off, and then it's another heat exchanger. That secondary water never touches the environmental water, which is our Lake Kiowee, which is our ultimate heat sink. And so that water runs through our condensers and it cools that secondary water and is returned to the lake. So you got like 3 different systems in 3 different ways that we make sure everything doesn't interact, and that's how we keep it all contained and maintain the health and safety of it.
And then I have something I'll add to that. So Oconee, you'll notice, you guys ever seen pictures of cooling towers at nuclear power plants? Where they got those like big bell-shaped cooling towers with all the steam coming out of them. So Oconee, we actually don't have those because our lake is large enough that is a big enough heat sink that's actually what we're using. So you'll actually see some nuclear plants will have those cooling towers and some won't, because the other ones that have the cooling towers, their heat sink isn't large enough. So what they do is basically atomize the water, so it's a better heat transfer medium, and they'll use that to cool on their lake side over there. But I mean, the biggest thing is to point out here is we are twice removed in our cooling loops from the environment, and each one of those loops is highly monitored when we go with radiation indication alarms to ensure that if we do get like a tube leak or something in our heat exchanger, it's identified very quickly and make repairs.
Fishermen love it too, because in the wintertime, it warms a portion of the lake and all the fish comes to this portion of the lake, and then so they love the fish in it because it's like, you know, they love, that's why all the nutrients and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
they're
it's-
out there all winter long, just like going around in the current,
Yeah.
picking up fish that are trying to keep warm. So this is a BWR. You'll notice, they're one little closer. So for one, they have to monitor a lot more. But then the other thing is they're not pressurized. They actually let theirs boil. And so they have to watch that, and the chemistry is very different. Their control rods come up from the bottom. I'll admit, I know the PWR a lot better because that's where I've spent my whole career. The only one in our fleet that we have that's BWR is Brunswick out in North Carolina. All the rest are PWRs. And I think. All right, so true or false, all of your power is generated by nuclear until you're age 70, all the used fuel within a soda can. You think it's more or less than that?
I think
You think it's true?
it said on your card that a house could be sustained for a year with 5 of the pellets.
Yeah. So it's true. We actually had koozies for a while that you could get that said like, if all my power is generated from nuclear, it would fit in this koozie basically. But it's a pretty good one. But yeah, it makes very little waste. And so if you actually come out to Oconee Nuclear Station, does anyone remember what year our first reactor started operation? Yes, 71, that's right. So you can actually, all of our fuel is stored there on site. So after you use the fuel, what you'll do is you move it what's called a spent fuel pool. It'll spend between 5 and 10 years there using water to cool it. Well, after that time, it's actually decayed down enough that you can air cool it. And so what we'll do is we have these big concrete canisters that we'll put in it, and we'll load a whole bunch of assemblies in there, and then we have a pad at right beside the plant there where we'll just sit there and let them be air cooled. And we monitor them. We go out there daily and take temperatures. Walk it down. It's all locked up with the rest of our equipment and everything like that. It's monitored by security. But all of our fuel assemblies since 1971 are sitting out there, and I don't think it don't take up much room. I don't think it's even like half a tennis court or something like that. It's not much room, and it's spread out too, so it can be air cooled. I've heard before if you take all the US fuel and you like try to pack it onto a football field, I think it's like less than what, 20 feet high? But it would all fit on a football field.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very small.
yeah, it's very, very small. But yeah, I encourage y'all to come out sometime because if you go to the World of Energy and you're standing up there, we actually have a little placard that kind of points out what stuff is and you can see it all there and it's surprisingly small. I know my husband, when he got a plant tour, he was like, that's all of it? That's it? That's it. And actually another interesting thing is France actually recycles their fuel. So, we could actually reduce the waste that we have down even more if we got into reprocessing. And all that would be is taking, you know, since it all slowly decays down, if we took out the atoms that are still in there, making that heat and separate them from the use of fuel, we could actually use some more of it again. But hopefully that's in the future. Yeah.
So, is it cost prohibitive or is it like process?
So it's cost prohibited and also is politics. It's because like nuclear, you know, is very intimidating because that's some high technology stuff and also the association with nuclear weapons.
Yes.
Nuclear weapons are made from a different type of nuclear fuel than power plants. But they're, yeah, you have to understand the differences. You know, everyone's like, oh, nuclear explosion. Nuclear power plants can't have a nuclear explosion. They could have a steam explosion, yes, but it's very different. And you still have to worry about radiation, but that whole big mushroom cloud, that's not what would happen. Yeah, yeah, it's reassuring,
I
right?
hear that.
Yeah, but that's why we always think it's so important to get out to the community and educate people about those differences. Is nuclear power the perfect power? No, but admittedly, I would say none of them are right now. They all have their drawbacks, as far as what it goes, you know, wind and solar, they're not always generating. Solar, those panels actually have a lot of chemicals in them, that have been issues with, you know, the wind, they say it kills birds. Gas and coal, you know, it has all the greenhouse gases associated with it. Hydro is pretty good, but it's very limited because how many places do we have where water runs downhill? So, I mean, the biggest thing there is capacity. Really what the best thing is, it has a little bit mixture of everything. And so then that way, you know, you're not depending on just one thing. You can be like, oh, well, you know, I don't want that much greenhouse gases. I can depend on my hydro and my solar, or, oh, it's a cloudy day. With like today, I'll use my nuclear. So it's good to have that good diverse mix. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and the water that she uses for the heat sink
Mm-hmm.
is processed, I guess, after, like usage and things like that.
Yeah, so we actually have a rad waste facility on site. And we use what's called demineralizers to help pick up all those anions and cations, and they'll rinse it through there and they'll get the water basically really, really clean. And even then, after it's really, really clean, they're monitoring, making sure it's below all environmental thresholds. And they do a dilution release is what they'll do, is they'll make sure it's as low as possible. And then we'll actually release it downstream of the Kiwi tail race where it's very, very low levels and everything is, you know, highly, highly monitored to make sure we're meeting those expectations as far as those thresholds to make sure it's low level radiation. Probably less than,
The natural occurring radiation.
yeah. So you guys ever heard that bananas are radioactive? Yeah, bananas have very, very low level radioactivity to them. Yeah, cause it's like, there's something out there where you Google it and it will explain radiation to you in terms of banana units. Yeah, it's a really fun, thing to read up on because it teaches you as far as just like, okay, where does radiation occur? Where does it come from? You know, cause you've heard it, you can get it from the sun, bananas, Fiesta ware is this old ceramic that used to have low level radiation to it. So it's surprising, like it's all around us and the biggest thing is just managing.
Good point.
All right, so our highest priorities at the nuclear power plant is safety. So the safety is making sure that our plants are reliable and operating responsibly. And then also safety with security. So, we have very, very high standards as far as what we have to do for, safety and, our responsibilities to the community environment. So I mentioned the, Nuclear Regulatory Committee. They come in and monitor us. We also have IMPO that is put together by all the companies that are nuclear owners, where we actually monitor each other, and we give each other advice and feedback as far as how to operate those. We also have, emergency preparedness, where we have a whole big plan that if it does go wrong, this is what we're gonna do. Cybersecurity, as you got to see today, with me fighting my laptop. Basically, I had to give up and come up with a new plan, but yeah. If you come out to the site, you'll see our security that we have set up. It's lots of fencing. You'll see we have dead zones where you have to go actually between two fences. There's pop-up barriers, all kinds of stuff. The security guards out there are highly trained individuals. They do drills. I got to participate in one of those this year, and just seeing those guys like they're doing like laser tag as they do it, and seeing their training as far as like how good marksmen they are. They're really good. I was very impressed.
A lot of ex-military
Mhm.
guys in our security department,
Yeah,
so a lot of guys that make you feel safe, and so we don't really worry about anybody, trying to do anything, because they are really top notch.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, safety is like such a big part of what we do, because it's just like, we're talking about safety as far as how we're protecting it physically, as far as responsibly managing our systems, making sure our systems are designed well, because we talk about layers of safety. We have emergency pumps for emergency pumps for emergency pumps. Everything for all of our training is, okay, if this doesn't work, I have this, and if that doesn't work, I have this, and if that doesn't work, I have this. It's just like, it is so many steps, and like, we gotta make sure all of them work. So, you've heard the saying, with great power comes great responsibility. That's what I really feel nuclear power is like, we have great power, we can put out a lot of power. But that means we have a great responsibility to make sure we're doing it responsibly and keeping everybody safe. So, our emergency planning network, it's basically a 10-mile zone around the plant, that we, monitor. It's basically because of what we would predict if there was a release, we would anticipate it to be about a 10-mile radius. And so we set up to protect everybody within that 10-mile zone. Have you guys ever heard the sirens go off?
Yes.
We do siren testing all the time.
They didn't have.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. So we have on-site sirens we test every week. We got the community sirens that we test. So that's probably what y'all see the most. In the plant, we actually run drills all the time, where we have an entire, everybody has their normal job, and then we have our emergency job, where we'll simulate, oh, if this happens, this is where you need to go, and this is your job, and this is what you're gonna do. We probably do those, what would you say? It feels like once a month at least.
Yeah.
It's pretty often.
Yeah. Well,
But.
we train we have required training for us
Mhm.
every 5 weeks.
Yeah,
And then they have different types of practice drills, so it's at least once a month for the emergency planning, and then they have NRC mandated exams that we have to do. We have to prove to the regulators that we can protect the health and safety of the public. So they run us through all our procedures. They throw at us a whole bunch of situations and watch how we respond, not just us, but how we interact with the emergency planning organizations in the different counties that we serve. So, yeah, it's very robust.
yeah. Every now and then we'll do a drill where we actually interact with our community players. And so it's like, we'll be talking to county offices. We actually have an emergency center in North Carolina that we talk to. Just basically so we can all get used to talking to one another and understand what we need to be communicating or anything like that. And those are really cool, because it's like, I've had the opportunity where I've been, what's called an ops supervisor. And they had me, pretending to make the 911 calls, and they were just like, my phone rang and they said, oh, this is a drill, so-and-so over here is hurt. I was like, oh, okay. And so like, I pull out my book and I go through it and they go, okay, so what did you do? I said, I would call 911. They go, okay, do it. I go, what? They go, yeah, today we're calling 911. I was just like, do they know we're and they're like, they know it's okay. But it was the first time I'd ever called 911 and I was scared to death because I thought I was hurt. Don't call 911. And so I'm just like, this is a drill. This is a Oconee nuclear station. This is a drill. I have an this is a drill. You know it's a drill. Tell me it's a drill. So like, I was so scared, but yeah. I that's pretty much until the lady said back to me, I understand this is a drill. I was just like, you know this is a drill, right? But I mean, and once she did that, they actually activated the fire department, and the fire department came out and made believe that a transformer was on fire, and they were running drills with our fire marshal on site. So just the level of detail they go through with these drills just to make sure that we're ready is just outstanding. And you get to meet new friends. All right, so to opt in for text messages to know when we're gonna be doing drills and stuff like that, you can text Oconee to 71729, and most of the time what you'll see is the siren testing. Most of the time you'll just see there's gonna be a siren test today. And that's pretty much it, is what I usually used to see from. But it's nice to know that way if anything ever does happen, you'll be getting emergency updates from your phone. I know our phones are set up to do emergency content broadcasts anyway, because I know every now and then I see Amber Alerts and stuff like that. The nuclear plant will go through the same thing, and it'll force those emergency messages. But just to be more tied in with another layer, that's another thing you can do is sign up for those text messages. All right, so I already talked a little bit about the Nuclear Regulatory Committee. I think I briefly mentioned info. That's the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations. So you have the Nuclear Regulatory Committee. That is what you're committed by law to do. The Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, they help you try to make sure you're going to meet your law requirements, but they also go another level to say, are you committing to excellence? Because like the big thing we always say in nuclear is it's like if one nuclear plant has a bad day, we all are having a bad day. Because that's going to affect public perception. Yeah. It's like if you see what can happen at one, you're gonna look at everyone else and be like, I don't want to do with that. Because I mean, that's the way it is, right? It's like if you see one bad actor in any field, you start being like, okay, who else can do that? Yeah. So as a nuclear owner, we interface with Exelon, Dominion, all the companies that own nuclear power plants to reinforce standards among ourselves, because we want all of us to be good.
Yeah, it's different than other industries. What we do, we have a thing we call operating experience. And so like if you got Coke and Pepsi, they wouldn't share information. But all nuclear power plants, we're required, if something happens at one plant, that's an issue, we have to share with the other plant because like I say, our main focus is public safety. So that's what IMPO help us do. They help us put out operating experience. If one plant learns how to do something better, safer, we'll take that and incorporate it in ours. If they find something out, and they'll say, hey, this happened here. Y'all need to go research. Is there any possible way that it can happen at your plant? And then we have to go and do that and then file a report back to IMPO and explain to them why we think that certain thing couldn't happen at all.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking that type of mindset would helpful because an individual won't want to hide fear.
Absolutely.
And because, if it were competitive, we're trying to keep,
Yes.
companies from knowing or that they had things going on, they wouldn't see that data or how to improve it.
Yeah.
So you have continuous improvement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of trying to have trade secrets.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. A big thing that comes out of this is, we push safety conscious work environment very heavily.
Yes.
And like, that means you want your work environment so anyone can reproduce you. for any reason, because, and we are very, very strict about retaliation and what that can look like. It's like, if at all you're flagged, like, you might want to think about your safety conscious work environment. It's just like, oh my gosh, we need to make sure everybody has more ways to communicate, and so we'll step it up. Another thing, something about IMPO, did you guys ever hear about 3 Mile Island? Yeah, so IMPO started after 3 Mile Island. It was,
When March,
say what? So that was Fukushima. Yeah, this is,
1979 was 3 Mile.
yeah,
And Duke Energy was one of the founding companies that started IMPO. And so basically what it is a organization of all the nuclear companies. They got together and they said, we're not gonna let the NRC, we want our controls to be even stricter to ensure we meet what our NRC commitments are. And so the thing you talk about, continuous improvement, that's what the IMPO organization is all about. We are tied to them, and they make sure that each plant is at their absolute best or driving towards their absolute best. That's
because like one of the really sad things with 3 Mile Island is one of the issues that they had that contribute to that is they have what's called a power operator relief valve stick open. And their control room wasn't set up for them to easily recognize that. Well, at Coney, we were set up the same way, and we had the same problem, I think not even a year beforehand. But because we weren't in that habit of talking with each other, like, hey, we saw our port stuck open, you know, this is what we're doing as far as training, you know, changing our control room and stuff like that, so that doesn't happen. They didn't know.
Yeah.
And so something like that, if they had caught that, it might have stopped it, or definitely, you know, was a huge contributor to it. So that was a big inspiration for putting together IMPO to try to make sure that, you know, if one of us falters, the other won't fail, if that makes sense. We also have our Federal Emergency Management Agency. They play a lot with our emergency drills we talked about. U.S. Department of Energy, they care a lot about fissile materials and making sure you're handling those responsibly. Department of Transportation, whenever we have our fuel brought to us, that's heavily monitored because you don't want anyone to steal your fuel while you're on the way over. But yeah, and then also all the state agencies within North and South Carolina, because you know we all have our individual environmental goals. The Army Corps of Engineers, we interact with them a lot for the lake, because people care a lot about that lake because they want to go swimming in. Lake Huey's a nice lake. So, you know, if we were to mess that lake up, people were hit. Yeah. So we want to make sure we're being responsible neighbors because, you know, we want to swim in it too. All right, true or false? Americans do not get most of their yearly radiation dose for nuclear power plants. These questions are kind of set up. Yeah. All right, so just kind of, this is a general breakdown of where you see most of your radiation. So 14% is medicine. Those are gonna be like your x-rays. Sometimes you'll have dyes and stuff put in your system that will help with monitoring. But you know, we all have general medical procedures that we see from time to time, dental x-rays.
And a good point, if someone was to have a medical something with radiation, they couldn't come into the plant because our monitoring is so sensitive and so controlled, it would blow everything up. That's how,
Like Haggard.
yeah, that's how, you know,
Yeah.
closely we monitor.
Yeah.
So if you got a medical thing, you're getting way more radiation than you would ever see that we would get in the plant.
So if they had dental
Yeah,
work done,
they-
they, you know, extras that it would pick it up.
So the x-rays, the
X-rays.
x-rays are fun, the stuff where they, put trace elements in your system to monitor.
Contracts.
Yeah,
things like
until,
that,
yeah, usually you have to wait for those to decay out and pass, and so usually our employees, when they get those, because they
Stay at
can
home.
lock down the board monitors, they'll just tell them, stay at home and still.
Come back in
Yeah.
3 days or 4 days,
It
something like
usually
that,
takes
yeah.
about 3-4 days for them to decay out and process. But 85% is the natural radiation we talked about, bananas. Airline flights, you know, the sun, you hear about argon gas, that can, give you some, natural radiation. And then 1% comes from the nuclear, industry. So, average American receives about 620 millirim each year, and then a nuclear worker typically receives 150 milligram for working in nuclear plant. So our legally max dose that we have is 2 milligram per, or two, no, yeah, 2 rims, so 200 milligram per 2,000, yeah. But what's really interesting is like, if you take that dose that we're allowed to have every year, and then you start going looking at, okay, how much radiation does it take for someone to feel sick, to, you know, die and stuff like that, you will see it is minuscule compared to, you know, the impacts, which makes me feel a lot better. The nice thing is anytime we're receiving that dose at work, is we have dosimetry on us that's monitoring our dose and counts it and everything like that. Most of the time out here, just walking around, I don't have anything monitoring what the sun's doing or whatnot. So they heavily monitor and try to make sure we don't go over it.
I've probably gotten less than 10 millirim for the last 10 years since being there.
Yeah.
So it's very, very low radiation. Now, the workers, some of the plant workers, that are interacting with the systems get a little bit more, but depending on your job, you may not receive any radiation.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for managing exposure is time, distance, and shielding. We do a lot of shielding around the plant, as far as just like concrete walls help a lot, lead shielding helps a lot, water helps a lot. Distance, you know, we all make sure we maintain a safe distance from everything. And time, if we go into the radiation field, we try to make sure we limit that exposure in time. I'm going to start kind of picking up because I'm noticing we're running out of time. All right, so as I mentioned. Yeah, as I mentioned, radiation is used in multiple industries. We already talked a lot about medicine. They'll use radiation to kill off bad microbes and stuff like that in agriculture and consumer goods. Safety, that you can have your little fire detectors, those actually have a radioactive element in it. But it's like the amount of stuff that nuclear radiation is used in is very prolific. And it's like, unless you educate yourself, you just don't know. All right, true or false, you must be an engineer working in the nuclear industry. False. So yeah, I'm gonna have to talk fast through this. I was an engineer and I'm in there, but you don't have to be. Operations, yeah, I'm an operator. Some of our latest new hires in operations are TCTC grads. It's like they came in, they got their degree here. I think they got a little bit of experience, and usually it's some kind of industry. A lot of assembly lines around here. As long as you have that mechanical aptitude or electrical aptitude, because we are in power production, that makes you a good candidate for be able to understand basic plant operations. We have lots of engineers, as you sure, because they do all the math and system analysis. Craft workers, tons of maintenance guys. We got to maintain our plant. It is getting old, and you know, if you want to keep something running and running well, you've got to have those guys around who know how to fix stuff, who can identify when something sounds a little off or not running quite right, and then they also help with the day-to-day maintenance. Some of these guys are top-notch maintenance guys. They're smart. We have a whole station sciences department that includes radiation protection in our chemistry department. We use a lot of water. The water has a lot of chemicals in it for controlling everything from controlling reactivity to corrosion inhibitors to make sure that our pipes don't rust out. If you can prevent that, then your pipes are gonna last a lot longer.
And will that rust change the reaction?
I'm sure it would, but
We don't have
we don't do that.
Yeah, we don't-
Yeah, we
Yeah,
keep
we
the
don't have
rust
any.
out.
I'm thinking about.
Yeah, yeah, so it can actually make it so that you have highly radioactive products in your system, which whenever you're trying to minimize radiation, we actually do what's called a crud burst to try to sweep all that out before we shut down. We also have support staff. We have everything. We mentioned security. We have admin specialists. We have training staff. It takes a lot of people to run a site this big. That's the video. All right, true or false? Nuclear plants are non-greenhouse gas polluting. Non. It's true. We don't make greenhouse gas. We already talked a lot about, our environmental benefits. You guys can read it, but it saves a lot of greenhouse gases, was using nuclear power. We already talked about how wind and solar, if sun ain't shining and the wind ain't blowing. The big part, the words for that is capacity factor. Nuclear, we try to go for 100% capacity factor. Usually we're hitting up in the 90s. That means 90+% of the time we are online and generating. You can see as you go through the different power types, it drops off significantly.
And where that ties in, if you got an area of the country that don't have a lot of nuclear plants, their electricity rates are higher. Because we have such a diverse and large volume of production in our area, we're able to keep our electric rates low, which means your power bill is lower. And everybody knows in wintertime, when you need to heat the home, it costs a lot. So we're not like a lot of other areas in the country that have astronomical power bills, even though ours seem high at times. Comparatively, it's very low.
So a lot of the stuff we've already talked about, those are the North Carolina plants, Brunswick, Harrison, McGuire. Lots of social benefits for having a salon. It's a big employer in the area. I think that's the biggest thing about nuclear sites is it employs a lot of folks to keep that large of a power source up. Same thing with South Carolina. We have a Coney, Catawba, and Robinson.
Property taxes, that what's goes to the schools, the county government and stuff like that. So that's why the nuclear power plants are very important, because it generates a lot of income for local governments and schools and stuff like that.
I think the rest of this. All right, so where to find more information? We're on all the feeds. Twitter, I think it's now called X. Yeah, but we got Facebook. They got a blog, website. Feel free to access any of those. If you go to dukeenergy.com, you can navigate over to our career portal. We post all the jobs for the plant or the company online in the same place. There's always a lot of jobs posted on there, and they're always constantly turning over. So I encourage you guys to go look through the current jobs. You can set up a profile and have it send you alerts for certain types of jobs. But it's probably the easiest way to find it is Google Duke Energy Careers, and the first link will take you there. But that's a very active job portal. I encourage everybody to give us a look. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if there are any opportunities, like say someone comes in, they start off, but then they see an engineering position and wanna go to school and continue
Oh, yeah,
to work at Duke? Do
absolutely.
they have any opportunities?
Yeah, so Duke Energy, as part of our employee benefits, actually does continuing education funding. Where once you're in as your full-time Duke Energy employee, they will fund your education up to a certain amount every month. I know one of my previous direct reports, I think she would probably take like about two classes every semester online. A lot of folks that come in operations without a degree will work on an engineering degree online while they're working as an operator. And just to provide them Cause you can have additional opportunities if
Yes.
you're operator with an engineering degree.
Good question.
That's a great question, yeah. What else? Well, that pretty much covers it. I know we went over by a couple minutes. I'm happy to stay around and answer questions. That's not a problem. I hope this was informative for everybody today. I hope you're interested in going out to the world of energy
Spread
or
the
checking
word.
it out online. Like I said, nuclear is a very complicated technology, but it is fascinating. So I encourage you to learn about it. The more you learn about something, the less scary it is. I don't want y'all to be afraid of nuclear. It's, you need to be responsible with it, but it is really cool technology that brings us a great amount of, power. And I think we've all pretty much identified we can't live without power. All right.
And one of the things that the slide doesn't show, it is an aging workforce.
Mm.
So there is a turnover. And Duke Energy is always looking for new people, more diverse people. So we are, we're constantly trying to get as many new people in. So just to reiterate, just please give it a shot, look into it and spread the word. So,
Yeah.
yes, that's
We
what,
love to have you.
yes.
Yeah. That's all I have for today. Yeah.
Well, as we come to the end of our men and women of color nuclear session, I want to thank each of you for your active participation and insightful contributions. Today has truly been an enriching experience, filled with valuable insights, engaging discussion, and inspiring stories. I extend special thanks to you, our guest speakers, Carlos, Minor, and Jess Link, for generously sharing their expertise and wisdom with us. Your passion for the nuclear industry and commitment to excellence has been evident throughout our discussion. And we are immensely grateful for your valuable contributions. I also want to acknowledge our sponsors again, our student organizations, women and men of color, for their unwavering support in making this event possible. Your dedication to promoting diversity and inclusion in STEM is truly appreciated, and we're grateful for your partnership. As we reflect on today's session, let us carry forward the lessons learned and insights gained in our future endeavors. Whether you are pursuing a career in nuclear or exploring opportunities in STEM, I encourage you to remain curious, passionate, and committed to making a positive impact in your chosen field. Before we conclude, again, I want to extend a heartfelt invitation to students. If you'll click forward for me.
Oh, yeah.
There we are.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, on February 23rd for Zumba, led by Charity Martin. It promises to be a fun and engaging, energizing experience that you won't want to miss. Again, on March 8th, we'll have Sarai Melendez, Community Connector, Walhalla City Council member. April 5th, Maria Morales from the Urban League. And then last but definitely not least, Dr. Lanika Mussolini on April 12th. Thank you again for your participation, your enthusiasm, and your dedication to advancing the field of nuclear and STEM. Until we meet again, stay curious and keep conversations alive. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, sorry for running over a little bit, but I guess that's a lot of information.
You're ever so passionate.
Yes.
I
Oh,
can't even talk about everything.
Oh,
It went by fast too, like, yeah.
well, I'm a talker.
Yeah. We want to get a group picture, so before people take off and things like that. You just scout, you tell us where to go, we follow the directions. Okay, that's.
One correction, I told you the wrong location for the transfer fair next
Oh,
week. It's
yeah.
actually student center, so
Students.
it's on the plaza level downstairs.
If you all are interested, I have a few flyers about Coney Nuclear Station. It's just